We reached week 11 of the 2014 NFL season. This is right about the time when the contenders really start to separate themselves, getting towards playoff time now, season just flying by as always. This a good week 11, several really good looking games on the slate. Would like to talk about a few of them now quickly. Do want to remind you though that we preview all these games in great detail here at BETDAQ Tips, so please check back with us over the next few days if you want a more detailed preview of one of these games. But I do want to touch on a few of them now, starting with the Thursday night game. Very interesting Thursday night game. AFC East rivalry, Buffalo going down to Miami to face the Dolphins. Both these teams 5-4. This isn't quite an elimination game in terms of the playoffs, but certainly the winner of this game will have a big leg up, especially if the winner of this game is the Buffalo Bills. That's because Buffalo's already beaten Miami this season. Back in week 2, they won 29-10 in Buffalo. So if they were to beat the Dolphins here, not only would they have a full game lead in the standings, but because they'd have the tiebreaker, they would effectively have a 2-game lead. And you never know, these teams could be jockeying for wild card position here in a month. So big game on Thursday night. Dolphins a 5-point favorite on BETDAQ. 42 is the total. That is a low total, but quite frankly, I'm not sure if it's low enough. Really believe the defenses are going to dominate this game. Both these teams ranked top 10 in the league in points allowed. Buffalo's 7th in points allowed, Miami 5th in points allowed. The Dolphins have been a little bit better on offense than the Bills this season, even though the Bills have seen an uptick in the passing game since Kyle Orton took over at quarterback for E.J. Manuel. But we saw that Dolphins offense just dominated by the Buffalo defense in week 2. So we've already seen what happens when that Dolphins offense runs up against this Buffalo defense. I'm sure they might have some more success at home, and especially because they really seem to have found a rhythm over the past 4 or 5 weeks. But still, I don't have much faith in Ryan Tannehill and the Dolphins putting up a whole lot of points on the Bills. That being said, I don't think the Bills are going to have much success against this tough Miami defense either. So even though we see a total as low as 42, I do like under that total, and I believe that is my favorite bet here. 5 points also feels like a lot to me. So even though I expect the Dolphins to win this game, I lean towards Miami on the money line. Boy, I'd have trouble laying that 5 points. I think there's a good chance that Buffalo keeps it closer than that. But again, under 42 is what I really expect to happen in that game. Let's move on to another game that should be a defensive struggle. The Detroit Lions heading out to Arizona to face the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals currently have the best record in the NFL, but as I'm sure you know, they lost their starting quarterback, Carson Palmer, to a season-ending injury last week. Drew Stanton will take over at quarterback in Arizona. We've already seen Stanton fairly extensively this season. Remember, Palmer was injured early in the season with that nerve damage in his right shoulder. Stanton started 3 games, I believe it was, before he himself was injured. That Cardinals offense took a big step back with Stanton under center. This guy does not throw the ball nearly as well as Carson Palmer. He might be an adequate backup, but the Cardinals have really struggled to run the ball this season. Their offense has been reliant on the passing game. They're 29th in the league in rushing offense right now. Even though Andre Ellington has been a great guy to own in fantasy football because he gets the ball so much, he's averaged well under 4 yards per carry this season. I believe only one game has Ellington averaged at least 4 yards per carry in that game. So the Cardinals just haven't been able to get anything going in the running game. And the Detroit Lions, first in the NFL in yards allowed, first in the NFL in points allowed. They have the best defense in the league. Facing the Drew Stanton-led Cardinals offense, I just can't envision Arizona having any success on the offensive side of the ball here. They are 2-point favorites on BETDAQ, 41.5 the total. That is a low total. We just talked about both of these defenses, or we talked about the Detroit defense anyway. We'll talk about that Cardinals defense in just a second. But a low total like 41.5. The Cardinals, a 2-point favorite here. You understand why they're favored. Again, they do have the best record in the NFL, but I don't know if I like it. I don't think the Drew Stanton-led Cardinals offense is going to be able to beat the Detroit Lions, even though this game is in Arizona. As we mentioned, the Lions so good on defense. Now, the main thing I would be concerned about here if I were Detroit better is the Detroit offense versus this Arizona defense. We mentioned the Detroit defense. The Cardinals, they've been playing pretty well on that side of the ball themselves. 4th in the league in points allowed. They're especially good against the run, but they've had trouble in the secondary. Arizona, 30th in pass yards allowed. And the Detroit Lions, a one-dimensional offense. They haven't been great on offense, period, this season. 24th in points scored, but they've really had trouble running the football. They can pass the ball, though. Top 10 in pass yards per game. And Calvin Johnson, Megatron, back in the fold now, caught a long touchdown last week. So this Detroit offense more healthy than it's been in several weeks. The Cardinals, again, led by a backup quarterback, Drew Stanton. I like the visiting Lions' chances here of picking up a win in Arizona. You know, it amazes me, I've heard over the past few days, a lot of people, NFL pundits, so-called experts or whatever, sort of no big dealing the Carson Palmer injury. I've read a lot of things saying, well, the Cardinals are still the best team in the NFL without Carson Palmer. You know, they've been winning with defense anyway, et cetera, et cetera. They point to Arizona's record when Drew Stanton was starting. They were able to scrape by and win a couple of games with Stanton under center. I'm just not there at all, as a matter of fact. This Cardinals offense was dreadful when Carson Palmer wasn't in there. And when Palmer returned to the lineup, it instantly, they weren't really good on offense, but instantly they turned back into an above-average unit on that side of the ball. Because as we said, the passing game is what Arizona has relied upon this year. That's how they've moved the football. They're just not going to be able to move the football, I don't believe, with Drew Stanton under center, especially against a tough Detroit Lions defense. So I am looking at the visiting Lions there. Another game I'd like to talk about, another defensive struggle. What about the Kansas City Chiefs at home facing the Seattle Seahawks? The Chiefs, a 1.5-point favorite on BETDAQ, 42.5 the total. Another really low total. Couple of should be real defensive battles here in this Week 11. And this is one of them, no doubt about it. It is rare you get the opportunity to back the Seattle Seahawks as an underdog. Again, Chiefs favored by 1.5 here on BETDAQ. Both these teams sitting at 6-3, well positioned for a playoff run. Both these teams rely on their defense. We know all about the Seattle defense. The Hawks currently rank 3rd in the league in total defense, meaning yards allowed, 4th against the run. They're surrendering fewer than 80 rushing yards per game this season. That's going to be especially important in this game because Kansas City, a one-dimensional offense, they love to run the football. They do not pass the football very often or very well. The Chiefs, 5th in the league in rushing offense, 30th in pass yards per game. Only 2 teams averaging fewer pass yards per game than the Kansas City Chiefs. And even though the Seahawks a little bit better against the run than they are against the pass, again, like we said, they're 4th in the NFL in rush yards allowed. They're actually 8th in pass yards allowed. We know that Legion of Boom secondary is by no means a weakness. The Seahawks good all over on that defense. Now, Kansas City, they're pretty good on defense too. 2nd in the NFL in points allowed. They're actually surrendering fewer points than the Seahawks this season. However, the Chiefs do have a weakness on that defense, and that is against the run. They're 1st in the NFL in passing defense, but 20th against the run. You can run the ball against this Kansas City defense. And the Seattle Seahawks lead the NFL in rush yards per game, over 170 rush yards per game. They ran all over the New York Giants last week. Certainly don't think they're going to approach that level of success in Kansas City. However, I do think they're going to be able to run the football in this game, and I don't think the Chiefs' offense is going to have much success at all. So have an early lean towards Seattle here. Again, very early. This is Tuesday. We're recording this video. The lines have just been released, so mine might change a couple of times before Sunday. But right now, considering the Kansas City Chiefs struggle to stop the run, Seattle runs it better than any team in the league. And on the other side of the ball, Kansas City very one-dimensional. They rely on their running game. They don't pass the ball very well. The Seahawks they allow fewer than 80 rush yards per game this season. Feels like a good matchup for the Seattle Seahawks, even though we know the Seahawks under Pete Carroll traditionally do not play as well on the road as they do at home. Probably why they're a short underdog against the Kansas City Chiefs here on Sunday. Enough of these defensive struggles. Let's talk about a couple of games where we're going to see plenty of points. What about the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road to face the Green Bay Packers? Both these teams red hot. Packers a 5-point favorite on BETDAQ. 55, a big total here. That's because we have 2 offenses that can put up some points. Both these teams coming off of big wins last week. Green Bay rolling over the Chicago Bears. Philadelphia doing something similar to the Carolina Panthers. So you would think both these teams come in here feeling good, high on confidence, especially the Green Bay Packers. They've won 5 of 6 games. 4 of those 5 wins have come by 21 points or more. They've just been blowing out everybody, and they will be facing a vulnerable Philadelphia defense here. The Eagles rank in the bottom half of the league in total yards allowed, pass yards allowed, and rush yards allowed. Of course, the same can be said for the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay is especially bad against the run, 30th against the run. Only 2 teams have surrendered more rushing yards this year than Green Bay. And even though Philadelphia hasn't been running the ball quite as well this season as they did last year, we know Chip Kelly loves to establish that running game. So I do think the Packers are going to get a heavy dose of LaShawn McCoy here on Sunday. Just so tough for me to bet against Aaron Rodgers at home against Mark Sanchez. That's what it comes down to for me. I know Sanchez played very well last week, 332 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against the Carolina Panthers. And maybe, I guess, you could make the argument that Sanchez and the Eagles are a good value here specifically because of Sanchez. Because I guarantee you, I'm not alone in saying I'm not betting on Mark Sanchez going into Lambeau Field and beating Aaron Rodgers and the red-hot Green Bay Packers. There's going to be other people saying that exact same thing. So you could say, hey, well, maybe the contrarian will use Sanchez's history, his prior history, his terrible history with the New York Jets. They'll sort of use that in their favor. They'll say, well, nobody's eager to bet on Sanchez, so maybe that's where the value is here, and they'll slide in with a Philadelphia Eagles bet. I've just seen it too often from Mark Sanchez. And I go back to what he said about a week ago now. And it certainly didn't work for this last game against Carolina because he's played great and the Eagles blew out the Panthers. But Sanchez was talking to Philadelphia media a week ago, and he talked about how important it is to be the best version of yourself. Talked about how everybody has different versions of themselves, and he's got a good version of himself, and he's just going to try to be that version. And I guess from a sports psychologist standpoint, that makes some sense. That worries me, though. It would worry me if I were an Eagles fan, if I were an Eagles bettor, because that means, it sounds to me, that means there's some fragile confidence there. That means if Sanchez, if some bad things happen to him, if he turns it over a couple times, and we know he has been turnover prone throughout his career, that means it might instantly switch back into bad Mark. And, you know, if I'm an Eagles bettor, I don't want to see a couple of mistakes from Mark Sanchez, and then in the second half we see the old Mark Sanchez that is hearing and seeing ghosts, flinching at a pass rush that's not there, turning the ball over, the butt fumble, etc., etc. We all know Mark Sanchez's history. So again, I don't have much faith in Sanchez and the Eagles going into Green Bay and beating the Packers. I do have an early lean towards Green Bay here, and I would lay the 5 points. Even though, hey, I guess it's tough to bet against the Eagles, especially, and give them 5 points after what we saw out of them on Monday night. They just look so good in running over, around, and through the Carolina Panthers. Still, the Green Bay Packers are not the Panthers. They have been red hot lately, and I'd be very careful about betting against them on Sunday. Final game I'd like to talk about in this Week 11. Do want to remind you we preview all these games in detail. But for right now, the last game I'd like to mention, maybe the jewel of Week 11, might be the best game we're going to see, the Sunday night game. The New England Patriots traveling to Indianapolis to face the Colts. Indianapolis, a 2.5-point favorite here, 57.5, a big total. Plenty of offense expected in this game. The Colts, a favorite, despite the fact New England has won 5 straight games. 4 of those 5 wins have come by 15 points or more. The Patriots have been on fire, especially on offense. And Indianapolis, even though they've been better on defense this season than they were last season, they're still vulnerable in the secondary. 27th in pass yards allowed are the Colts. So Tom Brady will have every opportunity to carve up that Indianapolis defense. And I do think the Patriots are going to have some success on the offensive side of the ball here. Be very surprised if the Colts were able to hold them below 24 to 27 points. But is that going to be enough for them to win? The Indianapolis offense so good, especially good at home. This season, the Colts lead the NFL in total yards per game, pass yards per game, and points per game. There is no question and no argument. The Indianapolis Colts have the NFL's best offense, and the Colts so good at home. 18-5 against the spread in their last 23 home games. They're coming off a bye, as is the New England Patriots. But look, it's going to be very, very difficult for me to bet against Andrew Luck and the Colts here at home after what I've seen out of this team all season long. The Colts have been great. They're especially good at home, as we mentioned. The Patriots, meanwhile, even though they've been better on defense than a lot of people thought they were going to be, over the last few weeks, that defense has started to slide a bit. They now don't rank in the top 10 in any major defensive stat. For a while there, they were top 5 against the pass, but that secondary has shown some vulnerabilities in recent weeks. And as we mentioned, the Indianapolis Colts lead the NFL in pass yards per game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring shootout. I would not bet against the Colts at home. I realize the Patriots have won 5 straight, 4 of those wins coming by 15 points or more. And believe me, I am a believer in the New England Patriots. They were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl. I'm not wavering from that pick. But I think in this Week 11, on the road in Indianapolis, primetime game, going to be tough for me to bet against the Colts here. Think they're a good-looking play as a 2.5-point favorite. Again, I say this on Tuesday. We'll see how I feel about it on Saturday. But as of right now, Indianapolis at home might be a good sell-high time for the New England Patriots. They've been playing so well lately. At any rate, it should be a great game. Plenty of offense on Sunday Night Football. There you have it. Those are 5 games that caught my eye in this Week 11. As we mentioned, we preview every game in great detail here at BETDAQ Tips. We also do a live pregame show every Sunday that begins 1 hour before the 1 o'clock games, the early wave of games. So I hope you join us for that. Until then, for BETDAQ Tips and BETDAQ NFL, I'm John Arnette.